Gari Dongda Ji Ji Wa Da Me Ne Be Chen Da Cha Wa Da Tin Bo Ju Ye Be Zo Zo Yo Ne Da Ye Den Ya Den De De Le Yo Sa Ye Be Ye Shu Ye Me Do Cham Ma Re Ro Ne Ye Nye De Jen Bo Sa Ye Yen Do Me De Bo Wa Go Wen Nam Da Jin La She Bo Sho Ye Dan Gu Ru Ro Na Ma De La Ga Ni Ya Da Ya Me Sang Je Che Dong Do Ye Chong Nam La Shang Zhu Ba Do Da Ne Xiao Su Qi Da Ye Ju Ju Ji Be Song Nam Je Lo La Pe She Sang Je Lu Gu Ru Sho Sang Je Che Dong Do Ye Chong Nam La Shang Zhu Ba Do Da Ne Xiao Su Qi Da Ye Ju Ju Ji Be Song Nam Lo La Pe She Sang Je Lu Gu Ru Sang Je Che Dong Do Ye Chong Nam La Shang Zhu Ba Do Da Ne Xiao Su Qi Da Ye Ju Ju Ji Be Song Nam Lo La Pe She Sang Je Lu Gu Ru Voilà, je m'en ai que tata n'y a pas de temps de tout ça là n'a pas bien d'avoir joué sanji kumbaron be jeni je tobre shago de tobre shewe chedo ambe cherum bo je senya be kono sanju je semchi se sembe gone sembarikyo.
Let us aspire for complete enlightenment for the sake of liberating infinite, kind, mother sentient beings. And for that reason, we should cultivate the altruistic motivation or bodhicitta motivation. And with that kind of motivation, we should all participate in this teaching.
당아란 참말로 네 코아당에서 그 동행이 탈 아니 대자마세 아니 링이지 이발에 전에 산지지 공부 토야겠다 된데 얘기요 버스
I believe that all of us are seeking not just freedom from sickly existence, but also freedom from the two types of mental obscuration, so that we could become what we call complete enlightened beings or Buddhas. So that I believe is our goal and aspiration.
오늘 당연히 정말로 어떻게 타박 되는 얘기요. 그래서 타박 되는 얘기 제발 다 가리고 그래서는 네 코알랑 인중 소히다 김마시나 아니 타박 되는 이거 게임만 많이 봐야란 짓이야 가버렸어.
So what is really included in aspiration is freedom from samsara or sickly existence, although that is not our ultimate spiritual goal, aspiration. But to be able to work for and attain liberation or nirvana or freedom from samsara, we must cultivate what is known as renunciation. We must renounce samsaric existence, and in other words, we need to develop aversion to the misery in samsara. Without that kind of aversion, or we call nyejung, renunciation, we cannot attain freedom from samsara. So in order to develop aversion to samsara and its misery, or renunciation of samsara, we have to reflect upon and realize what we call the disadvantages of being in samsara, the demerits or the faults of samsara. Generally, what we could see ourselves doing is that instead of seeing the faults of samsara, we somehow, how should I say, admire samsara and what pleasures that samsara affords us.
ngaranso nekab ke ta dewale chane and saji dewale chane ta ti tendi nye ne ani kowe shen de tongyo ma ta ti do sho ne ne saji dewale chawa she ne ti tendi nye ma to kola shen ta da yungu ya ma ja teng ba do go go sta go.
So what I mean to say is this, that usually what we find ourselves doing is that we are attached to samsaric pleasures or happiness, and which is, by the way, very temporary and what we call contaminated pleasures and happiness, because these are not true happiness and lasting happiness. And out of such attachment, we pursue such pleasures and happiness of samsara, and thus, we do not see the faults or what is wrong with samsara. And so being in this kind of situation, we get trapped in samsara and we couldn't get out of samsara. Now, to be able to get out of samsara, step number one, so to speak, is to be able to realize what is wrong with samsara, or what is wrong being trapped in the samsara.
No, that day, kare is na kowe she andi chani ane rang ane dunghe nyongsu de ta da roa ri ngana so shesa tele che de le da nyamong ke wang ke ta ya ba chin ni ge de man go sing yo ma ngana da thama ba jo le ta nyamo ba ni cho she ni di wang ge ta kowe ne she yong go re shi de zhen kowe ne ge ta dunghe ta bo jing yong ji er ta cha de khe go re.
So how should we approach, understanding what is wrong with samsara or to be in samsara? Now we really need to fall back on our own personal experiences of being in samsara. What kind of problems and suffering, difficulties we encounter in our own lives, and also that we see in others' lives. And when we think about how we got into samsara in the first place, we really did not get into samsara by choice, but we were really thrown into samsara by our contaminated karmic actions and delusions. So the way we come into samsara was not a good news. We got our rebirths in samsara have been decided by or precipitated by delusions and contaminated karmic actions. So we did not come out of a choice. We did not say, okay, out of compassion, out of aspirational prayers, I decided to come into samsara to do some good. No, that was not our story. Our story was we were forced into, we were thrown into samsara by our delusions and karma. So that's the same story with all the 6 types of sentient beings we call migrators in samsaric existence.
So that kowe ne is rang de kowe ne de so du gouvernement to shitang longba nangi jin sam tong jamares.
So as I explained this to you before, understanding samsara is to understand ourselves, how samsara is not environment or location out there. Somehow we got trapped in that physical environment called samsara. Samsara has to do with our contaminated physical and mental aggregates, and who we are and how we got into samsara. So this is what we really need to understand, that samsara is always with us wherever we go. It's not a place, it's not an address that we stay for a while.
Quale tabe compa to the Chani rangi division amita quade bangni tabato mato shetani peta longban jin pan those turned at lick some tonjamaris.
So that's because when we talk about how could people liberate themselves from samsara, anybody, any individual who frees himself or herself from delusions for good, so they could liberate themselves from samsara. So it's very personal. That's the point I want to make. It is not a location. It's not an environment or place. If that's the case, then we could all decide not to go there, so we could all be out of samsara by now. But that's not what it is. Samsara is very personal and very intimate to who we are, as person. And so individuals who make efforts to get rid of delusions from within their system of the mind, they are the ones who get liberated personally and individually. So therefore, because samsara is very personal, so we need to, reflect upon what are the personal, experiences that we go through, being in samsara. So as a part of understanding samsara, which is an essential part, is that we really need to understand the suffering nature of samsara. What kind of sufferings exist in samsara? So therefore, the teachers should be willing to teach about the samsaric problems and suffering, and the students should be willing to listen to this. If we all decide, not to really talk about suffering of samsara, that's not a good idea. Because we do need to talk about it, and we need to realize the suffering nature of samsara to get out of it. So long as we do not find nirvana or liberation, we as individuals or beings, keep on being reborn over and again, continuously in different states of samsara. So that will be our story, that we take a form in samsara, we die, then we are reborn again in samsara. So it could be in different parts of samsara. So that's why we talk about 6 states of existence where we could be in samsara. And the worst kind of a situation or a state of samsara that we could find ourselves in is called nyalwa, means hells. And hells consists of both what we call extreme hot hells and extreme cold hells, plus auxiliary hells or surrounding hells. So to be in those hells is to be in the worst situation in samsara. Beings in the hot hells, they are constantly tortured by unbearable intense heat, as if they are just cooked on the burning iron surface, and their bodies and the flames become almost like indistinguishable. That's the kind of intense suffering of heat that they go through. And there are 8 hot hells, and so the intensity of suffering in each of these hells is greater than the other. And there are also cold hells where there is intense suffering of, cold, and so where, one's bodies are frozen to death, and bodies are cracked. They open like the lotus flower petals, and that's the kind of suffering cold hell beings go through.